I believe that knowledge is power. And this is why so many people in America especially feel powerless, because they have no knowledge. They're wasting their lives away because they're ignorant, ill-informed, and unread as to how the world works. As long as civilization does not understand where we have come from, where we are now, and where is the whole human race going in the future. If you don't have that kind of spiritual vision, then we're going to perish.
Been artificially divided for far too long, left and right, when in reality, both the Republican and Democratic parties are owned by the same global elite.
They wanted to make the money.
This satanic plot was launched back in the 1760s when it first came into existence under the name of the Illuminati. This Illuminati was organized by one Adam Weishaupt. Masterminds in control of the CFR are the descendants of the original Illuminati conspirators. To conceal that fact, most of them changed their original family names to American-sounding names. At all times, the operations of these organizations were and are masterminded and controlled by the internationalist bankers. The conspirators choose the word Illuminati for their satanic organization. Weishaupt himself said that the word is derived from Lucifer and means holders of the light. His objective was to bring about a one-world government to enable those with mental ability to govern the world, and all the national radio and TV channels in the nation are owned and controlled by those same internationalist bankers.
I'm here to prove to you that bankers, especially in the Federal Reserve System, make multiplied trillions of dollars and never create one thing of value. Money's the bloodline of a civilized society. Reduce the amount of this in the system below the levels necessary to sustain the current trade, and you create a depression. In 1930, let me ask you a question. What happened? The bankers decided no more money for you. The stock market collapsed, all at the whim of the bankers who decided they wanted to make the money. Watch me. They got out of the stock market the year before. I can give you the family names. $100,000 farms were selling for $3,000. Who do you think bought them? We didn't lack industrial capability. If you don't believe me, I just told you what started the Great Depression. Let me tell you what ended it. World War II. The same banks that said no money for farms, no money for food, put people in soup lines, no money for commerce, no money for railroads, no money for roads, no money, no money. All of a sudden said war, and all of a sudden factories that were closed down began to work 3 shifts. Where'd the money come from? The same pockets that refused to give it before. Because they decide when it will be printed, how much will be printed, and how much usury or interest will be paid. Not the federal government. The federal government has no say in it, as I will prove to you. By the simple manipulation of a few wealthy bankers, World War II ended the Great Depression. After successive failures to convince the public of the need of a central bank by wars, these same European bankers financed both sides of the Civil War in this country. You don't even know that. Same bankers, same families, financed both sides of the Civil War. Why? They make the money. After they couldn't get the American people to swallow the lie of a central bank, by creating war. They decided they would artificially create, listen to me, recessions, depressions, inflations, and panics. One of the key movers and shakers was a man by the name of, you might recognize it, J.P. Morgan. His father was an agent for the wealthy, you might know this name, Rothschild family. Northern Securities that was intended to act as the international bank for the Rothschild Company in the United States. The first major panic created by the international bankers occurred in 1893 when local bankers from around the nation were told to call in all their loans. Told by who? By these wealthy bankers. Senator Robert Owen testified before a congressional committee that the call on the banks stated, you will at once retire 1/3 of your circulation and call in 1/2 of all your loans. Why? Because that makes the bank collapse.
Start educating yourself. The United States government is a corporation. It is a privately owned company.
When Congress passed the Act of 1871, it created a separate corporate government for the District of Columbia. This treasonous act allowed the District of Columbia to operate as a corporation outside the original Constitution of the United States and outside of the best interests of American citizens. U.S. Congress committed the biggest theft in world history. They passed Paul Warburg's Federal Reserve Act in 1913, handing over America's gold and silver reserves and total control of America's economy to the Rothschild banksters. Most Americans still believe that the Fed or Federal Reserve is the government. It is not. The Fed is a privately owned banking system whose majority Class A shareholders are the Rothschilds, Warburgs, Kuhn and Loeb, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Israel Seif, and the Lehman Brothers. This private banking cartel is the Fed and is never audited and never pays taxes. They print and design America's money, which displays their symbols of an Egyptian pyramid, a Masonic all-seeing eye, and the words, "In God We Trust." Most U.S. citizens believe that the United States is a country and that the President is the most powerful man on earth. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation, and the President is President of the Corporation of the United States. He and his elected officials work for the corporation, not for the American people. Who owns the Corporation of the United States? Like Canada and Australia, whose leaders are prime ministers of the Queen and whose land is called Crown Land, the United States is just another crown colony. Crown colonies are controlled by the empire of 3 city-states. At the center of each city-state is a towering, phallic-shaped stone monument called an obelisk that points skyward. In D.C.'s city-state, the obelisk, known as the Washington Monument, was dedicated to Freemason George Washington by the Freemason Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. A third city-state was officially created in 1982. That city-state is called the District of Columbia and is located on 10 square miles of land in the heart of Washington. The District of Columbia flies its own flag and has its own independent constitution. Although geographically separate, the city-states of London, the Vatican, and the District of Columbia are one interlocking empire called Empire of the City. The flag of Washington's District of Columbia has 3 red stars, one for each city-state in the 3-city empire. This corporate empire of 3 city-states controls the world economically through London's inner city, militarily through the District of Columbia, and spiritually through the Vatican. The Constitution for the District of Columbia operates under a tyrannical Roman law known as Lex Fori, which bears no resemblance to the U.S. Constitution.
How many of you know that the 1040 form that 40% goes to the Queen of England and the other 60% goes to the Popes of Rome? Not a penny goes to your children. How many people know that that's a tribute under the secret treaty of Verona? And how come your leader guys haven't told you all that? Why you're so poor? Why you're being drained? Why they don't want to discuss these things?